so that we can post this recording to our website for anyone who was not able to hear or attend. With that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Robin Anders, Director of Instructional Technology and Accountability, and I'm coordinating, organizing our LCAP for the upcoming school year. This is a 3-year plan that I'll be organizing. But before I dive into the presentation, I want to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. John Paramo, just to set a few opening comments to start the evening.
Thank you. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me okay. I am battling a cold. Had a COVID test this afternoon and it was negative, but having trouble projecting my voice a little bit. Hopefully it's not going to be an issue. I wanted to start tonight by expressing my thanks and gratitude for all of the folks who emailed me over the last couple of days. I have read through all the emails and really have internalized what concerns are regarding budget cuts. And so what I want to say is that the endeavor we are on together is not going to necessarily be fun. We are in a situation where we don't have a choice. We have to cut $1.6 million out of the LCAP budget. That is our reality. So what we cut and how we cut that will be something that we can work through as a community to decide where best to do that. I don't think that anything we put up on the list as potential cuts are going to necessarily be good. All the things that are in the LCAP are there because they serve a purpose and they were there to assist and help our targeted subgroups. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be easy, but it's something that we're going to have to do together. I want to really ask everybody in the community to put faith in the process. There is a specific process to come up with a 3-year plan. And I totally believe in that process. If we do each step thoroughly and don't get ahead of ourselves, this will turn out right. It'll turn out the best we can make it. And I feel very confident about that. Dr. Anders has put a lot of work into tonight's presentation. He's going to be sharing survey data from our community about what our community thinks are our top priorities, where they think that we need to potentially reconfigure or where they think we could potentially cut. We're going to go through that data. The second data set is a data set of areas where we could cut based on what our site administrators and district administrators have put together and feel that we might be able to make cuts in those areas. There is nothing finalized. There is nothing set in stone. No decisions have been made. This is part of the process. Everything that's on that list is on that list because it's what came out in the discussion. So we will go through that. What I'd like to start off by saying globally is that when we go through the items that were on the list from administrators on potential cuts, you will get an explanation because some of those cuts are cuts out of LCAP, but not cuts in services. Some of them are services that can be reallocated somewhere else. And so when we go through those, we will explain that so that you have a better understanding. And we'll get to that slide probably towards the end. There will be an opportunity for you to comment and to share concerns, and we will do that for you at the end. I'm hoping that by going through the presentation, a lot of the questions you might have will be answered through the presentation, but of course, we'll give you guys an opportunity at the end to either make a comment or ask a question.
With that, we will begin our presentation tonight. Just a reminder for our attendees from home, please remain muted during the presentation. We will discuss or have an opportunity for your input later in the meeting. So we're talking about budgeting our supplemental funds specifically that are in our LCAP plan, just our supplemental funds. And these are generated by our unduplicated pupil count If you've been with us the last couple of years or a previous meeting, this is important. This is important data because it generates the funds we're discussing this evening. Unduplicated means students are only counted once, even if they are in multiple subgroups. So you may have a student who's free and reduced meal program and also an English learner. That student still only counts once to generate these funds. But as you can see, these are the trends for the last 2 years and our current numbers as of about late October, early November. Our next slide goes into the detail of the budget and the dollars that these students generate. And where I want to start with this slide as far as budgeting for next year is where we've left off previously. So you'll see on this slide, there were carryover dollars from 22-23. Those dollars were money that were identified to spend, but maybe we had vacancies or an action item we were not able to accomplish that. Primarily, though, the vast majority of these funds were savings in our supplemental budget because we had COVID funds that allowed us to spend those down as those had expiration dates and served some of the same purposes as these supplemental funds served. So we spent those down and saved some of these supplemental dollars for future years. And that's where you see that carryover. Revenues, like I just explained, are generated by our unduplicated pupil count, our students that are in some of those subgroups that generate those funds. Our total budget and expenditures. The total budget is a combination of carryover funds and revenues. So we combine the revenue we received that year with the carryover from the previous year. Then we look at our total expenditures and subtract that from our budget to produce a carryover. So at the conclusion of this year, we're anticipating that we will still have a small amount of carryover in the tune of $824,039. That's significantly less than we had in carryover the previous year. That's in part due to our unduplicated count not increasing or decreasing. And so we're deficit spending. We carry over our funds into the 24-25 school year. So we're adding that $824,039 to what our projected revenues are for next year for a total budget for next year of about 12 million, just over 12 million. If we don't change anything in our plan, if we leave everything as it is currently, we are projected to spend a little over 13,285,373. So that creates our deficit. We're spending more than we get in revenues, and we're exhausting any carryover funds that we have. Dr. Promo, anything you'd like to add on that?
So when we're talking about why are we cutting $1.6 million from LCAP, it's because we're deficit spending. We're overspending. We're overspending by $1.2 million. And we need to balance that. So if it's 1.2 million, then why are we cutting 1.6 million? That's a very fair question. So what I want to explain is if you look at our current situation when it comes to our English learners and our newcomers, we've had a huge increase in Burbank Unified School District over the last year. And our current plan does not accommodate for all those learners and what their needs are. So we have to add dollars to be able to service those kids because supplemental funds are for our targeted subgroups. And our largest subgroup is our English language learners. So we're obligated to meet those needs. So in order for us to take a crack at that, to start to provide those services for the kids where this money is supposed to be spent, we have to cut more to be able to have funds to be able to address the needs of those kids. So we're deficit spending by 1.2 million. We're hoping to cut 1.6 million so that we have $400,000 left to be able to plan and to provide services for English language learners. That's how we got to the dollar amount.
We're going to slow down our pace just a little bit for our translators. So I do want to recognize if we slow our cadence a little, that's why. Dr. Paramo just explained the next slide about the figure of 1.6 and how we got to that point. The next couple of slides are going to talk a little bit about the process that Dr. Paramo explained at the beginning of the meeting and how we've come to where we are today as far as having an initial conversation of where we could save or reduce our spending. This slide that's currently up combines both survey data and feedback from our community, parents, and staff with data from conversations and discussion with site administration and district administration. These items on this slide are items that we are considering as priority, items that we need to make sure we fully fund or potentially increase funding because of increased need. The highlighted items are highlighted because those are items in common, both from the survey and community and from our district and site administrators. The items for the parents, staff, and community are in priority order, so you can see the percentage of respondents who identified that action item. We're looking at 50% in goal 1, and the highest item in goal 2, about just shy of 70%, and the highest item in goal 3, 66%. On the principals and district office side of things, those items are not necessarily in priority order, but those are the items prioritized. And so these are the things we're committed to funding, and from both groups. And we'll take that into consideration with any decisions that are made. The next slide is looking at items that the community, public, as well as our administration felt could be restructured, condensed, or reimagined or revised to help with the budget. So you can see again these items identified by goal and the percentages of community support. As we look at this item, there's less items in common, but I do want to make sure it's clear that some of these items are on the next slide and vice versa, as far as whether they should be restructured or reorganized or reduced or removed. Third slide in this series is looking at items that should be considered for reduced funding or potentially not continued funding, excuse me. So again, same sequence. We have our community results from our survey and our administration result data on the right. Again, percentages, same organization of the data. Just want to remind that there are more highlights in this slide. We'd have a lot in common with what our community has said and what our administration has identified. We're not going to speak too much, as this is data that can be digested, and I know we have a lot to discuss tonight, so we're going to continue on. Before I do want to share a couple of ways that we'd like to generate some feedback from everybody participating tonight. So here, for those of you that are in person, we have a couple bulletin boards up in the room. Goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. We have Post-it notes, some big Post-it notes, some small Post-it notes. So those are opportunities. If you'd like, please write down your questions, your concerns, anything you'd like us to know or hear from you about any of these items. Just a reminder, as far as how these items are organized, based on the list of the next slide, goal 1 is going to be geared towards our instructional programs, and those would include items like response to intervention, as well as library coordinators at the elementary. The goal 2, which is kind of our whole child wraparound services for students, so that's what that goal is, would include items on the next slide, such as secondary intervention specialists and our CDS program. And then goal 3 is our goal around high quality teachers and staff. And so a lot of our DEI goals are part of goal 3. Just want to make that clear as far as how these fit under different goals. I know I did not mention all the items that are on the next slide, but I do want to make sure that some of the big ticket items are shared. For those of you that are attending online, we have the same thing set up as well. So we have Padlets, virtual bulletin boards for you to also post your questions, comments, concerns. So all this feedback is very valuable to us. It's part of the process that Dr. Paramo described. It's also things that we share with both the county and the state as part of our plan in generating educational partner feedback from our parents, students, and community. So I wanted to share those 2 processes. At any point while Dr. Paramo is presenting the next slide, please take time to share your thoughts through either of those mechanisms. So for those of you online, I'm going to be posting the Padlets in the chat right now. Those Padlets are in the chat. Please post your comments there, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Paramo to walk us through our next slide presentation.
Thank you. So if you're following here in the audience, you can see a list of potential cuts in the LCAP that are based on recommendations from principals and district staff. So I just want to take my time. I don't want to rush through this. I want to be able to answer questions and explain, because I think that if you just look at this, it looks like elimination of a lot of things, when in some instances it is a reallocation or a restructuring potentially. So I just want to go through that. So the first item on there says extended school year, and this is a summer school program from English language learners. This is not a service that will go away. It is simply not going to be paid for out of the LCAP budget. We can appropriately pay for that expenditure using ELOP funds. So I just want to make sure we're clear. I mean, this is a service for EL kids, and that's what supplemental is all about. So we're not going to take that away. We're just moving it to a different funding source. Secondary summer school, initial credit, and credit recovery. So all you see right there is the dollar amount that's being cut. The expenditure for summer school is close to $500,000. So what we're saying is that we'll hold on to $350,000 to run summer school for secondary, and we're going to cut that by $150,000. So what does that look like? I want to be really specific. There are essentially two programs that we offer during the summer. One is an in-school, in-person summer school program for students who have failed a class. It's not for D's. It's not for grade improvement. These are kids that have to recover credit. So they are allowed to come into summer school. They're allowed to take a summer course and recover credit, so that if they got a failing grade, they can earn those credits back and still be on track for graduation. The second program is an initial credit program. These are what a lot of people refer to as go-ahead classes, classes to get ahead. Typically, these classes are very limited. They are limited to health and careers for incoming ninth graders, PE for incoming ninth graders, world history for 11th graders, and US history for 11th. I'm sorry, world history is for 10th graders, US history is for 11th graders. That is the extent of our initial credit program. We have been drawing back on that over the last year or two. And what I mean by that is we've been offering world history and US history, but only to a limited amount of students. If you did not get into the initial credit summer school program through BUSD, we will help you to find a free online platform out in the community that you can do a summer class and be able to take it and still get ahead, but you're doing it at an online platform. For example, the two most popular in Burbank is Silicon Valley, which is an online, completely virtual way to make up a class, or we use Ivy Tech, which is another platform where our kids can take courses over the summer for free and still be able to take the class and get ahead. Those are our summer school programs. So what I'm talking about when I say we're going to cut that back by $150,000, what I'm talking about is outsourcing more of summer school to be able to have savings. So that means that the limited amount of world history and US history classes that we did offer would go to a completely online platform with some other school for free. And that is the way we would save $150,000. So will kids still have the potential to take classes to get ahead? Yes. It's just not going to look the same way. And that's how we're saving $150,000. Okay. I'll tell our translators. I'll slow down. The item that says PBIS costs, that was for a contract with the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and we are no longer under that contract. So that $33,000 is just on the natural, something that can go away. Secondary intervention specialists. So I want to make sure we're clear that these are 5 positions, one at each of the middle schools and one at each of the 2 comprehensive high schools. This is a big ticket item. This is something that the principals felt that they could work around by not having them. And I need to explain that a little bit. 3 of our middle schools receive Title I funds. So those 3 middle school intervention specialists can still stay on, but instead of staying on and being paid for out of LCAP funds, the principals are interested in keeping them on and using their Title I funds to cover that expense. That is for the 3 middle schools. That does not cover the high schools. So I just want to be clear about that. And I know that's a big deal. I'm just going to be honest with all of it. The next 2 items are CDS. When it says 267,000, that's for 2 teachers. And then it says CDS instructional assistants, that's for 4. Here's what I really want to make clear about these items for CDS. The total cost to run CDS is $1.2 million. It's only a very small portion of the expense to run CDS that gets paid for out of LCAP. We are in the process of trying to redesign how we service the students at community day school. And the reason that we're doing that is because the law has changed, and some of the students that would normally get referred to CDS, which was for excessive attendance, are no longer allowed to be there for excessive attendance. It's just not appropriate. So you have a fewer amount of students. So CDS is typically 30 students. If you take those excessive absence kids out of the mix, that drops a school of 30 to a school of 15. So we're looking at how do we service these 15 kids appropriately in a different manner. When you see this on the LCAP to come out, it's coming, that funding is coming out of LCAP, but there are still money in general fund to run a CDS program. This is simply saying that this expenditure from CDS that's paid for out of LCAP needs to come out of LCAP. And we'll put the plan together for how we service the kids that would go to CDS, and we'll pay for that out of the general fund. So this is just a small portion that comes out of the LCAP budget. Targeted support for at-promise gate students, it's $5,000. My proposal is that we take it out of LCAP, and I'll put that $5,000 expenditure into the general fund, and we'll cover it there. So it's not going to be an LCAP, but it's a service that will continue. The next several things have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a $10,000 expenditure for supplementary materials. Facing history, we have completed this project, this program, so that $10,000 can naturally come out. Mental health consultant for $25,000. In all honesty, we have not funded that. It's been in the budget, but it was not funded. We didn't hire the consultant this year. So I feel like we would be able to still maintain a DEI program without it, because we're doing that now. DEI site collaboration. So I wanna explain this. What we had in the budget previously was $70,000. That $70,000 was set aside in a line item so that our DEI leads that are at the site could have the potential to come together and work on a DEI plan for the school. And the money that was in this budget was to pay for the sub to cover the teachers so that they could come in and plan for their next site professional development or whatever it might be. It was $70,000, but we weren't using that whole $70,000. So what we're doing is we're cutting that down to $35,000, which on the natural is what we're spending now for collaboration time. So it's a reduction, but I really don't think we're going to feel a big hit with that because we weren't spending the $70,000 in its entirety to begin with. So it's just reducing that. Elementary library coordinators. So I want to make sure we're clear because we did not have the initial slide correct. So I want to make sure we're speaking about this correctly. It is 11 positions, but that's not the same as FTE because not every position is full-time. So what we're talking about is 11 elementary library coordinators, but the actual FTE is about 7.5 FTE. So that comes out, if we do reduce it in half, it comes out to a savings of $181,550. Now, what I want to say to the community is this is what has come out of discussion with administration. We are not checking a box and saying this is what we're going to do to move forward, but this is what came up naturally in that conversation. That is why you see it here. I'm not feeling really good as superintendent wanting to cut library coordinators. So I just want to say that and let you know that. That's a hard one for me. So what I want to tell you is that if we want to fully fund that, then that $181,000 has to come from somewhere else because something's got to go. The dollar amount has to go. So I've already been working with district staff. I've already talked with our board president and our board vice president on some other alternatives in terms of where we could cut in order to be able to keep this fully funded. So I want to go back. I'm not trying to be elusive in any way. I'm just not prepared yet to tell you exactly what that is because I need to work it through. What I will tell you is that I want to go back and look at the summer school budget to see if there's a way for me to cut back more there. What I will share with you is that many districts have stopped their summer school programs for a couple of reasons. One is because it's not required by law. That's not a really good argument for me because our kids need it. But the other component is that it's very costly to put on a program. So a lot of districts have already, for years now, outsourced all summer school to outside agencies that are free of cost. Now, I think that is going to be a big deal in Burbank because that's not part of our cultural identity. But I feel like we're in a position where we're going to have to make some really tough choices. So if we are really committed to wanting to keep our libraries open full time, then something's got to give. And there's the potential there where we might be able to offset some costs to be able to fully fund the library coordinators. We're still working through that process. So want to just make sure I say that, let you know what that's about.
I want to clarify something in previous documents that we've published regarding LCAP. We wanted to make sure it's clear that it was identified as 11 FTE. That's inaccurate. There are 11 schools, there are 11 staff, but it's not a full-time equivalent. That's what FTE is, full-time equivalent. And so most schools receive about 50% or a half day funded through LCAP. So the total FTE for elementary library coordinators or full-time equivalent is actually about 6.94% that's funded out of LCAP, not a full 11 positions. Just wanted to make sure that was very clear. I apologize for that being misrepresented in any of our previous documentation.
Yeah, sure. Nice.
So we need to make sure we clarify for our audience at home. The question was about the library coordinators. Just making clear, it's just about 7 full-time positions, but those are distributed across our 11 elementaries. It's 11 individuals, and that full-time equivalent is dispersed evenly, basically across our 11 elementaries, if I said that correctly.
Correct. Yeah. Next item is elementary response to intervention teachers, $250,000. So what this looks like is typically extra hourly or a 0.2. It's something that a teacher does in addition to their normal assignment. So the proposal here is to reduce those funds in half. What I want to say, though, about that is one of the items at the elementary that the principals feel strongly about is that they maintain their curriculum specialists. So with this reducing in half, to some extent, our curriculum specialists would also be able to fill in the gap for services when it comes to elementary and intervention. So I wanted to be able to say that. Yeah, that's a real hard one for me as well. That is what has come out of our discussions as principal district admin team. And the last one is the cost for a stipend for someone to do peer assistance review. And what this is a service that will help coach and mentor teachers who might be struggling. And so that is what we are also identifying as an area where we might be able to. If these things are fully funded in terms of if we fully cut these at the dollar amounts posted, then we reach our goal in terms of how much we need to cut. So if we don't make these cuts in their entirety, then something else has to replace it so that we can get to the dollar. Hope that's.
We're going to take a few quick questions before we get into any discussion, just to clarify this slide or any questions that came from it. One was regarding RTI teachers that just popped in. It's not just an additional assignment for some classroom teachers. It is also separately hired teachers who take on these roles in some situations. And I want to confirm that that's correct. in some situations, yes. There's also a question previously in the chat about our secondary intervention specialists, if John Burroughs High School would be the only high school or school identified that does not have additional funds for that. So I'm going to read the question specifically. Will JBHS not be able to find funds to keep the high school intervention specialist? It will be the only secondary without an intervention specialist.
That's not correct.
Address that.
Yeah, that is not correct. Right now, because the high schools do not receive Title I funds, it would be both John Burroughs High School and Burbank High School without an intervention specialist.
And
That's correct.
And then I don't think if we missed your question in the chat, go ahead and repost it. Do we have any specific questions from our audience in person that we can address? Yeah. Going to rephrase the question. So for our people at home, if anybody else live has a question, we do have a microphone in the back. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. It'll help make sure everybody can hear at home what your full question is. But the question was, would a parcel tax be able to solve some of these budgetary issues? Yeah. Like an itemized mini parcel tax.
So I really don't think that it would be in time, and I'll tell you why, is because at a recent board meeting, maybe 3 board meetings ago, we had open discussion in public. And what we decided was that as a district, we were going to foreclose on the prospect of either a bond or a parcel in March, simply because there wasn't enough time to do that, to pull that off in March. So if we decide as a district, as a board, to move forward with either a bond or a parcel, it would have to be in November. And those funds don't come to us immediately. So this has to be reconciled before the end of the spring. We have to have this all sent to LA County Office of Ed by the end of the spring. So I don't see that those funds, but I like the idea, because that funding would help us in the future to be able to, if we had to cut all these things, to be able to bring them back.
2 questions for you, Dr. Paramo. So could you tie together?
Did you get a text? You were online? Yeah. The folder. Oh, okay. Still wasn't put together. Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So I have 2 questions. One, could you please tie together what we're envisioning here with these proposed cuts? What we're envisioning with these proposed cuts with what we're also hearing about in terms of when teachers retire, that they will not rehire for those positions. So we are also looking at larger class sizes going forward as well in a number of our schools. Could you tie together a larger picture for us? Because from what I understand, this is one set of LCAP reductions. Then we also have another entire issue about class sizes. And then there are a few other issues that I've also heard floating around. And I'm sure a number of other parents are concerned about these things. Could you help us connect the dots about what is actually happening right now?
Absolutely, I can do that for you. In total, we are in the position together to cut $4.5 million, actually $4.6 million, right? $1.6 million is specifically from LCAP, which is what we're going over right now. But we're also in the position to have to cut $3 million out of the general fund. So how are we going to cut $3 million? We already had contract language that set two separate benchmarks. One benchmark was 170 student contacts per day in the secondary. So what that means is that I was a high school English teacher and I teach 5 classes. If each of my classes had 34 kids in it, then that's 170 contacts and I'm good. We're within contract language. In addition, the second benchmark said district average of 30.5. So those two things are competing with each other. And if you're going to hold to 30.5, I'm never going to get to 170 contacts. So it was kind of a moot point. We had that language in there, but we're not able to really pull the trigger on 170 contacts per day if we have 30.5 in contract language. So the 30.5 language in the contract has been removed. So now it's 170 contacts at the secondary. This is all at the secondary. It's not elementary. So what that means is that how we're going to come up with cutting $3 million is by a reduction in teaching force. And what that means is that at the secondary, the standard will be 170 contacts per day. Now, I want you to know, and I'm being really honest, a lot of districts in our local area are at 180 or 185. So 170 we felt was reasonable and as far as we wanted to go. So that's what's in the contract now. So that would be a reduction of $3 million in the general fund, $1.6 million in LCAP. And that's something that we have to do this year in order for us to be solvent for the next couple years, right? So we have to have a 3-year plan, and that makes us solvent for the next 3 years. That doesn't include whatever the financial landscape is in California for the coming year, which doesn't sound like is going to be very good. It's all over the paper. You can see that right now. If you Google anything, you will see that the anticipated financial situation for schools for the next school year is not good. Correct. Sure. So do you mind?
Oh, please.
I,
I'm a BUSD teacher. I'm talking using my teacher voice, so it's probably too loud for this microphone. I attended the ratification meetings with BTA. I asked specifically the question, if we went to 170, if the district would start cutting teachers. I was assured by CTA that that was not what the district was going to do. We would not have voted on a ratification to cut 29 teachers is what you're proposing tomorrow.
Mhm.
That's 29 of me, citizens of Burbank with students in Burbank schools. I would have never voted on that. Yeah, and when I asked the CTA rep, they said that there would be 0.2s would be taken away, that early retirement would be offered. there were a lot of different ways that you could achieve that without going right to 29 teachers. 29 teachers, that's a lot. Not a single administrative cut, by the way, on that either. No furlough, no 10% reduction on all the salaries that you all make. But for us who teach, they're in the classroom doing the work, right? I would have never voted for something if I knew you guys were going to come after my job. I never would have. We were assured that you would find other ways to do it. And I was shocked when I got the email, not to my Burbank USD email, but to my personal email about this meeting tomorrow with item 3B on it that talks about cutting 29 teachers. This is, I want to make sure that at least our side is being shared here. Yes, you had a deal. But when I asked the question specifically to my CTA representative at the ratification meeting, they said to me that there were other plans in place, that you were not going to come after the teachers.
Well, so part of that's true. There are other plans in place. So let me speak to that. On the natural, we have about 10 teachers every year that retire, correct? That's pretty normal. We also have an incentive that we are sending out. It's a one-time $1,000 incentive for anybody who is going to retire or who knows they're going to separate from the district to let us know by January, I don't remember the date, January 19th, I believe it is. And with that information, those items reduce the amount of teachers that would need to be let go in a RIF process. So yes, we're doing those things. Absolutely. But all I can say to you is there's been no smoke and mirrors about what we're trying to achieve with the contract language. So I can't speak to what your CTA representative said to you. I can't do that. What I can tell you is part of what you're saying is absolutely true. In addition to those two things, we did pay for a consultant to put together projections for us if we were to give, I don't know what the term is, golden parachute, golden handshake to give incentives for people to retire. And that did not pan out for us. It turned out that was not going to be something that was going to produce a positive result for us. So we went and we were foregoing on that. But we also looked into that as a potential way to mitigate the number of teachers that would need to be reduced. So I think those three things are absolutely true, but I honestly can't speak to the other.
And so with the 29 teachers that you plan on letting go, how many of those will be teachers currently teaching right now that you plan on riffing by the end of the year?
Yeah, I don't even have an answer for that. And I'm also going to tell you that number was based on our current enrollment because that's the only thing we could base it on. But our projections for next year with student enrollment is continuing to decrease. And everything that we know from our demographers is that it's going to continue to decrease for the next 10 years. So my point is that number is, I just actually had a conversation today with the BTA president and spoke specifically about that we are currently, our benchmark as a district is to figure out before Christmas break, before winter break, what is our projected enrollment for next year. So based on that projected enrollment, it's not going to be the same as it was 3 months ago because that was based on current enrollment. We're going to have to see what that number looks like.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So 29 might not be let go. So you're not going to are you letting go of people? You're not going to let go of people, right? So
That's correct.
So teachers will be fired?
There are teachers that are employed right now that are under temporary contract. There are teachers that are probationary. At the end of the day, teachers will be let go But that's not to say, I think it's not appropriate to say that these are necessarily permanent or tenured teachers.
But if enrollment is decreasing, but Jefferson Elementary and Muir Middle School are continually increasing, they're so big, it's untenable. I mean, it's really, we have bullying, we have a need for intervention, we have, I mean,
John Muir Middle School has decreased significantly this year.
but that's because of the social emotional work they're doing, right? And the DEI work, but we're cutting that,
Yeah, I'll
right?
projection for John Muir Middle School, because, and I'm only using that as an example because you used it as an
Yeah,
example.
yeah, please.
Is at the moment less than 1,300 for next year.
But
That
why?
that doesn't account for the potential number of inter-district transfers that come in, but on the natural, based on where the current fifth graders are tagged to go to their middle school, because that has already been done. What we know is that the current seventh graders, that'll be eighth graders next year, the current sixth graders, that'll be seventh graders next year, and the current fifth graders that are tagged to go to Muir as sixth graders, that number is under 1,300.
But,
So my point is that even those schools that you're listing that are big
yeah,
are experiencing declining enrollment in a big way.
okay.
And I just also wanted to point out again that this is specific to secondary, not elementary.
How come if it's decreasing, there was noticed that you can't have, it's like, I get confused by inter-district and intra-district.
Sure.
But there was information that John Muir is not accepting.
Yeah.
Inter-district.
Right.
Transfers.
Yeah, I can explain.
They're under, that's confusing.
Yeah, let me explain it to you.
Okay.
So there is contract language that puts caps on the number of students that can be in an EL classroom. So, for example, if you are an English language learner and you're in an English class, that class cannot exceed 20 kids. Otherwise, you have to open another class. On the natural, with all of the transfers that were coming into Muir, they could not accommodate all of the additional classrooms to be able to service those kids in two ways. One became a facility issue with having enough classrooms, and two, it was getting enough people to cover those classrooms, because in all honesty, the last year we let everybody in, half, this is not exaggeration, half the staff had a 0.2 and then got burned out and didn't want to do the 0.2 in the spring. And that's why we had to start limiting the number of kids that can go into Muir, because on the natural, a lot of the kids that were going there on permit tended to be English language learners.
But what about the students that weren't and that they're trying to apply?
Yeah, so when you cap a school, you can't discriminate. So when you cap a school, everybody's got capped. We can't cherry pick. I can't say.
What's the cap at Muir? Because I thought it was like 1750.
So, the cap this year was 1,400 kids. I believe that's correct. Yeah. I couldn't remember it was 14 or 1450, but I got a nod from the CBO. It's 1,400 kids.
Okay.
So that was the cap for this year. If we need to cap Muir, it's probably not going to be at 1,400 kids because there's declining enrollment. So if we have to cap the kids, it's probably going to be capped at 1,350 because the total number of kids has gone lower. Yes, ma'am.
So my other question, Dr. Paramo, is you've now shared that we are $4.6 million short. And my apologies for being a few minutes late.
No worries.
Did you already explain how we could have such a significant shortfall? Was that already covered? I'll ask somebody else.
No, I can explain that to you.
So that's question one. And
Okay.
then, so that's, how could it be such a significant shortfall that requires this kind of drastic action? The second part is, I was telling my son tonight, the one I mentioned is currently at Jefferson, and I told him tonight about some of the things that are planned on being cut, like bullying intervention and inclusion and equity programs, loss of library staff, loss of teachers potentially. And the first thing he said is, but Mama, those are all the things that make a school a school. And so I'm struggling to explain this to my child as to what the school community will look like if the programs that help our students to interact with one another and to be prepared for the diverse democracy of the 21st century are the things that are being removed. And as we know, kids act out, and if they're in middle school with classes of 35 plus, right? How these are pieces that are, we're putting our whole, what is that? The finger in the dam, like the little Dutch boy.
Yeah.
And so I would love it if you could talk a little bit about how could the shortfall be this steep, number one, and number two, as we attempt to plug these holes. And for those of us who really love being Burbank residents, but are concerned that we can barely afford to live here because you can't even buy a house in Burbank. But the one thing we've held on to is Burbank schools, Burbank schools. We have the best teachers, we have the best resources. And we are told that when we moved to Burbank. And we've lived here now in this town for 10 years. So how do we make sense of that in the face of what is being proposed by the district? Thank you so much.
Sure.
You guys are asking all the hard questions. No, it's totally fine.
So, I'm almost at 19 years in Burbank, and I really do love this place. I mean, it's hasn't just been a job. I mean, my son went to Burbank schools, and he graduated, and I thank the entire community for helping me to take care of him because he's doing really well. And he was a tough kid. So I'll just leave it at that. So I spent 10 years at John Burroughs High School, and I feel like that was a long time. And I really got to know all the teachers there, and I think they're absolutely amazing. And I got to spend a couple years at Muir, and I think the teachers there are amazing. And I'm only calling out those two because I was specifically on that site and gave my time, gave my heart to those schools, and I just know what talent we have. Over the last several years, what we have seen is a significant amount of our teachers and administrators leaving Burbank Unified School District and going somewhere else. That's been talked about in board meetings. That has come up from citizens who go to board meetings under public comment to say, we're losing the teachers, we're losing administrators. Yeah, that's what is happening. Because we have not been able to keep pace with surrounding districts and what they're able to compensate their people. And there's a lot of reasons for that. In short, we do not get the same funding. We don't get the same funding as Glendale, and it just takes 10 minutes to drive that way, and you're in Glendale. And they get millions of dollars more to run their school district than we do, because they have 51% or more of their families that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and we do not. And so we are not eligible for those funds. And because of that, we have a hard time keeping pace with salary. It's just a fact. It is just a fact. I use this example only because it's close to me, because I come from a family of educators. My brother Mark is 10 years younger than I am. He's been in El Monte Unified for 25 years. He's a history teacher. He's a football coach, and he got an 11% raise last year. Got an 11% raise last year, and they are not sitting here in a meeting like I am today talking about how we're going to cut $4.6 million. They're not having to do that. That's not their reality, but that's ours. That is certainly ours. The board and the superintendent at the time, because I became superintendent on June 8th, acting superintendent on June 8th, were very public. Were very public, very clear that if we were going to give our people the raise they deserved, which they deserve, so we can hold on to them so they don't go to any other school district, that we could do it. We could give them the raise they deserve, but it was going to mean significant cuts the following year, and that's where we are. That's why we're having to make huge cuts. Is because we're trying to take care of our people. We're trying to keep good people, but at the same time, we're having to make these huge cuts because we're just not funded in the same way as other districts that you may look at or may have friends at. And it's just that. And it's very difficult. Now, I know it's unpopular and I know it's not going to be cool that I say this. I just want you to know, but this is the reason why we've tried 2 times to pass a parcel tax, is because those money would go to people and programs. And we came really close, but we didn't get there. If we had gotten there, I'm not saying we wouldn't have had to cut, but it would definitely not have been this big. It would definitely not have been this significant. I can assure you of that. That's what we have to wrestle with as a community. And I want to have those discussions so we can talk about, this is the reality of where we are. And if we don't like this reality, what are we going to do about it? And how can we as a district make it so that people are comfortable agreeing to pay for a parcel tax? Because I think there needs to be some flexibility. We need to be able to hear the community and say, what are you willing to do that's going to help us out? And let's talk about that. And that's for the future. That's what we're going to have to do for the future. Now, I want to say a couple things because most of my career has been at the secondary. Not counting my work at the district office, but I've never been in an elementary campus. So it's all been secondary, middle school and high school. I know that when you think about intervention specialists going at the secondary, that's really scary. You talk about middle school kids. I know middle school kids. So what I'm trying to tell you is that while this item might be going away from LCAP, the reason why I'm able to not freak out is because I know that those services will still be provided. It's just going to be paid for out of Title I as opposed to LCAP. Now, I know I don't have, I'm not going to have a satisfying answer for you about intervention specialists at the high school. I'm not. But here's what I can say. The high school is staffed significantly different. They have assistant principal athletics activities, assistant principal discipline, assistant principal guidance counselor, assistant principal instruction, a principal. There's more people there. So it's not great. I don't want to lose them. That's not what my choice is, but there are more people to be able to fill in the gap there. So I'm grateful that we have a solution potentially, not potentially, we have a solution for middle school. And high school, I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay just because of the natural staff. Okay.
Oh, okay. We will take your question.
Oh,
The question was if we've received Title I funds.
yes, we have. And I'm looking at our guru over here. Any significant changes or no changes? Fully funded. Fully funded, yeah.
I have quite a few questions. The first is about intervention specialists, both at the secondary and elementary level. So I'd like just some clarity, because I read every school board agenda that comes out and I look at all the supplemental materials. I would encourage everybody to do the same when they come out. But if you'll see, the supplemental materials, I shouldn't say you'll see, I'm sure you look at them, Dr. Paramo. I'm always shocked by looking at intervention planning hours and how much is spent on that, as well as the 0.2s at each school site. There's quite a bit. And so when I look at this, I'd like just some clarity when we're talking about secondary intervention specialists and elementary RTI teachers. Are we talking about intervention planning hourly that current teachers are already getting? Or are we talking about a specific staff member, faculty member that will be cut? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so when we talk about intervention specialists, those are this is my way of thinking about, they're non-academic. So when you think about RTI,
Yeah.
that's intervention, right? But that's academic intervention. That's intervention in a math classroom. That's intervention in an English classroom. That's different than an intervention specialist who really concentrate their work on social emotional stuff, and really assisting and working with the admin team to be able to work with targeted groups and to try to provide for those situations that come up that are more social emotional in nature.
As well as attendance.
Can you say that again? I'm
As well
sorry.
as attendance. Attendance is a really big component of it as well.
So when you're talking about cuts here, you're talking about specialists. You're not talking about those intervention planning hours that I read about. So is there any plan, because as a parent of a BUSD student, there's a lot of money spent on that. And as a community member and a resident, I don't see a lot of accountability around that what does that look like? How does that affect my student, my students' peers, the school community? I don't really know what's happening with that. With the way, what I would say you've done a very nice job today of really kind of laying out each line item and explaining to us what this does in our schools, what this does for our students, what this does for our community. I'd like to see more explanation around that, as well as point twos. I'm curious, and I would like more information around what's happening in the schools in terms of enrollment, right? You're talking about declining enrollment, which I understand. There's declining enrollment in California, right? In schools, there's very few school districts are seeing increasing enrollment and will, right? And it's even a nationwide problem. But I'm wondering, are we planning the school year well when we're talking about cutting teachers? And my concern is we are heading into next year with cutting teachers, right? Removing teachers, reducing teachers, whatever the nice language is. But yet then what I see then is adding in the point twos. And it's concerning to me because I think if we're talking about increasing class sizes, and now we're asking teachers to take on a point two. So for people that don't know, right, like a secondary teacher teaches 5 periods out of 6. And if we're asking them to take on a point two, that means they're teaching 6 periods out of 6. So I want you to think about it as a parent of a high school student who has many teachers that are on a point two. What happens is that teacher doesn't have a planning period. And my child hears, well, I'm 6 weeks behind in grading because I'm teaching 6 periods. And they're stressed and they're overwhelmed. And I just don't know that that's a functional way to keep going. And I'm seeing also, I'd love to see more transparency around like what that looks like. And for the health of the teachers and the students and the school district as well. Do you have any kind of thoughts or
Yes.
ideas to share about that?
So I am going to concede that I need to get you more information on the intervention hours.
Okay.
But I have a lot of information on point twos. So when you used your example earlier of 29 teachers, right? That can we just use that? Can we just use 30 because that's a nice round number, right?
Let's
just-
not. A 29 seems
20.
pretty severe already.
How about 20? Is 20 okay? Okay. So if you take 20, right? You take 20 teachers and you have 10 retirements. Now you're talking about 10 teachers, right? Okay, then you take those 10 teachers and you start thinking about, your point is very well taken about point twos. There's a lot of reasons why there are point twos. I won't, I can get into that if you'd like me to, but what I'm saying is all those point twos go first. I want that to settle in a little bit, but all those point twos go first. All those additional classes are gone. And that will help to mitigate the number of teachers that get a RIF notice, right? So that's a very, let me give you an example. There are capacity issues when it comes to facilities at Burbank High School. And so Burbank High School in particular has way more point twos than John Burroughs High School does. And there's specific reasons for that. And so when you talk about the reduction in force, those are the first things that go. All those additional point twos are going to go because we have a reduction now. And so there aren't going to be all those point twos on the board. And sometimes what happens is we're trying to be really tight in our staffing because we don't want to overstaff, because then we're going to be spending money that we don't have. So when you're really tight with your staffing, you could have an influx of kids the first week of school, and I might not be able to hire a teacher in time. And so people are taking point twos. And so you have 3 or 4 teachers that are taking an additional course. So I understand it doesn't sound like the best thing to do, but it's actually being done so that we can try to mitigate overspending in a situation where we don't have money to overspend.
I appreciate that explanation. I will add that it does seem like it's more of a general practice for Burbank to engage in. That there is this sort of like underestimation of the number of classes that are going to be offered, and then the point twos come out. And it seems like that's something that needs to be, again, a little more transparency and investigation around. Another question that I want to ask about is when you brought up the language around the 30.5 versus the 170 contacts. So again, as a parent of a child in BUSD, as well as a spouse of a BUSD employee, are you suggesting, and I want to just be clear, are you suggesting that secondary schools for the past few years have been hovering around 30.5, that's been like what the class sizes have been?
So by contract,
Mhm.
the third week of school,
Yeah.
the school is required to meet with union representation to go over the master schedule.
Mhm.
In addition of going over the master schedule, to produce the document that shows what the average class size is for the school.
Mhm.
And what I will tell you is that we have been under 30.5 for the last several years, not by much, 29.9, 29.5. Some schools are 28. And I understand why you're shocked. Looking.
I want to share my son's Google Classroom with you before.
But let me explain, because
Yeah.
when you come up with that,
Mhm.
you have classes that are 45
Mhm.
because it's a band class. But in addition, you have a special ed SDC class that has 8.
Mhm.
So when you add up all the classes and you divide, that's what the number comes out to.
So by doing the 30.5, you're averaging general education with special education then?
All classes.
Okay. Does that seems a little confusing, right? Because you know that those classes are always going to be a little bit smaller, the special education classrooms. They're also more likely to have instructional assistants that general education classrooms are. I can let you know that
This has just been what's been agreed upon contractually for years.
yeah.
Before I was an assistant principal at John Burroughs High School.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important, right, to look at sort of the humanizing aspect of this and to we can look at average numbers and they tell one story, but to actually look at class numbers, I think is another story, right? And so, in middle school and high school, my son's never had a classroom with 29 students or less, ever, I can tell you. My last question is about the initial credit conversation. So I'd like to hear totally, I think is so important, credit recovery, right? Like we want, I think, I am really impressed when I look around at neighboring like school districts and I see the graduation rate at BUSD, right? And I want to make sure that students can do that. For the initial credit, I was kind of curious because when you discuss, and I've seen this again as a parent, the initial credit offerings, that they're specific to world history and US history. That's like kind of curious to me why those specific classes. But I also wonder about the decision to offer initial credit. And as you said, like the get ahead kind of thing of why that's a priority for the community to incentivize students to get ahead rather than right now with all of these proposed cuts. We're talking about sustaining students. We're talking about sustaining the most vulnerable students, right? Students that need intervention, students that need support, students that are newcomers, students that are English language learners and so on. Why is that something that we're kind of prioritizing as a district?
That's a really great question. So, in order for me to do this in a way that's going to make sense, I just have to take one at a time.
Okay.
So for 10th graders, world history, for 11th grade, US history, it's because those are required courses in those grades. So why would a child want to take those courses during the summer to get it out of the way? It's because these are, and they're not, it's not everyone that's doing this, but a family or a student may want to do that because they just made it into chamber choir that is 2 periods out of the day. So that's a really impacted schedule. Or they're doing choir plus they're on the baseball team. And so in order to accommodate the electives they want to do, they are trying to take one of the required courses during the summer to open up a slot in their schedule to do that. It's the same thing for why we prioritize health for incoming 9th graders. Typically, we run 5 classes during the summer. So why are we doing that? Because if a child is not doing that health class, then they're not likely to be able to begin foreign language until the 10th grade. And they may want to start Spanish or French or ASL in the 9th grade. So in order for them to be able to do that, they're taking a course during the summer to open up a slot during their regular school day.
Can I follow up to that? I don't believe, unless I'm incorrect, the Health and Careers has been offered for initial credit by BUSD for years. Because my child wanted to do that because was an athlete and couldn't start foreign language until 10th grade. But it was only through, what was it like?
BYU.
Yeah. So I don't believe we've offered that for a number of years. It used to be, but, and I guess with the why is why I hear you that that's a required course, but like why the social sciences? Why not like language arts? There's other required courses, like why target that subject or that discipline? That was what I was saying.
It's supply and demand. That's what they're asking for. And as far as health, we have been offering it for, I'm just going to be conservative. We've been offering it the last 5 years for sure. It's probably longer than that through BUSD. Yep. Yep.
All right, I think thank you for answering all my questions. I
Of
appreciate
course.
I have another one
Thank you.
about the intervention, the elementary RTI.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so elementary RTI teachers, they're gonna take, it's 250,000 can be reduced from that. And the reason is because, I'm just trying to understand. The reason is because curriculum specialists are going to take on that work.
So when the elementary principals came together, they looked at the items in LCAP that were specifically servicing elementary school kids. And based on the items, their task was to find areas where they might be able to cut. So they don't want to cut RTI at all. Just want to make sure that I say that. They don't want to cut it at all, but they felt like they can still put a meaningful program together by contracting that. Now, one of the items that they feel very strongly about keeping is the curriculum specialist, which is focused on the academic program at the school site. So if there's a way to leverage their curriculum specialist to assist with that, I believe that that's what they will do.
I guess my question is, how many RTI teachers will be eliminated? Because right,
That's a good question.
in,
I don't have an answer because it's not always a teacher hired specifically to do RTI. Sometimes it is, but it's not always the case. At some schools, it could be an additional 0.2 or additional money to cover an RTI class. So I don't have a specific number, but we can work on that and get that to the public.
okay, yeah, because I think a concern is that with RTI, okay, already we have one child in every classroom, at least one child who needs assistance, right? And so if you take away, and there are teachers already who do the work and they don't have an RTI in elementary schools, they don't have assistance. But I'll tell you, every year that my child has had an RTI teacher in there helping a student who needs an RTI teacher, that class runs better. And it's so much more beneficial to the educational experience.
Sure. What I want to point out is there are 4 key items in LCAP for elementary: curriculum specialist, intervention specialist, RTI, and your library coordinators. So when you talk about wanting to save library coordinators, or you're talking about wanting to fully fund RTI, the other stuff that's being funded is equally important that everybody's going to say is important as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is none of this is really great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
because if the principals decided they thought they should have that fully funded, then it's going to have to come from some other place. And what's the other place? Is it
And this is-
curriculum specialist? Is it elementary intervention specialist? What are we going to make it? And so I think that this is what they felt they could do and still be able to do it well.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to remind our listeners at home, we have Padlets. They're in the chat. I'll repost those. So we may not be able to get to everybody's questions tonight, but if you do have comments, concerns, those would be a great place to put those. You're also welcome to email our district team with any questions or concerns. But we'll try to address a few more this evening. There is a board meeting tomorrow night too. So, and we got to make sure we want to make sure our superintendent stays healthy. So just keep that in mind, but we'll try to address another question or two.
Yes, please.
Dr. Promo, thanks so much for taking all the time tonight. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
You've provided sort of structure for us to understand about this $4.6 million budget shortfall. And one of the explanations that you provided that I agree with is about how do we fairly and in a better fashion compensate our teachers so we can actually keep all the high quality teachers that we so crave here in Burbank. $4.6 million is a lot of money. And what I'm trying to understand is how much of that is actually going towards compensating our teachers? Will our teachers be able to do their work as effectively if they're losing some of these supports that are being removed in order to, you were sort of, what is that? Paying Peter to feed Paul? I don't know the statement. You know where I'm going with that. And then the third part of that is there some piece that I'm missing or not understanding about? I guess I just haven't heard the conversation that we've had such a dramatic shortfall. I mean, our teachers have been underpaid for years, right? So why now? Is there money missing? Like what? This just seems bigger than anything I've heard about in the last 10 years living here. So, and if I'm asking you this, I know I can't be the only person thinking this across Burbank. So I'd rather just sort of have it out in the open because, you know, a lot of us are on various mommy groups, for example, on Facebook, Magnolia Park Moms, Burbank Mommies, etc. And so then there's all kinds of questions raised in those spaces with sometimes facts and sometimes a lot of conjecture. So if you could talk through that, and the final part of that is, are there other places we could be getting money from? I'm a big believer in taxing so we can have the best quality services. And I know unfortunately that many in Burbank don't agree with that philosophy. Are there other places that we could also be getting money from to best support our students, teachers, faculty, etc.? Thanks.
No, they're good questions. So my bachelor's degree is in English and I have a master's degree in English. And I have it in English because I'm not good at math and I never have been good at math. And I'm not supposed to say that because I'm supposed to have, I'm not supposed to be projecting my math trauma. That's what all the research shows. And I'm not doing a very good job of that right now. The answer to your question is very clear in my head. I'm not sure I'd be able to articulate it well. So I'm going to take a stab at it, and then I'm going to ask our CBO to fill in the gaps for me. Okay. So I was actually not superintendent, and I was on the negotiations team last spring trying to work out the teacher raises. And what we firmly stood by was that all we could afford was 5%. That's all we could afford. Told them the budget. They said, this is what we can afford. I need you to understand that every other district was giving a double amount. Everyone. 9%, 10%, 11%. It's outrageous. I'm not even going to go into what LAUSD gave. But this is what we said we can afford. We can afford this 5%. You know, it's not going to go over well for teachers here that are already paid below everybody else, and then find out they're going to get a 5% raise while everybody's getting 10 or 15, and now the gap has gotten even bigger. So I know it seems like it just came out of nowhere, but it's because of the funding we got from the state and what districts were capable of doing to compensate teachers. And by comparison, what we were allocating, which was 5%, didn't come close to what everybody else was getting. And we knew we had to do something because otherwise we were going to have everybody bailed. And so we tried to give a comparable raise, knowing that we'd have to make some pretty big cuts and sacrifices. And that, I just want you to know that it doesn't solve the problem. But those were very candid conversations we had with our partners when we sat down at the table, right? So, well, the one thing I'll tell you, and it's the 100% truth, I'm not grandstanding. Our relationship with our teachers union is fantastic. They are so cooperative. I'm blessed. We try to be the same because we're not gonna, this is a community effort. We're not gonna be able to survive unless we're working together as a team. And that's what we have. We have a team. So the good, the bad, the ugly is done with a group of people that are not trying to play games of any kind, are being upfront and being honest about the landscape. And when we make decisions, they're made fully understanding what all the unintended consequences might be. That's what I would say. But that's not really answering the math question, but I think our CBO will be able to help us with that.
Good evening. My name is Andy Cantwell. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services here in Burbank. There's no question $3 million is a large number. I never want to minimize that, but I do think it's important to put in context of our overall budget. So our budget for the past couple of years, depending on the year and how much one-time funding the state gives us, hovers between 200 million and 250 million. So to put this into context, it's roughly about 1.5% of our operating budget. To give another percent to look at, This current year, our funded ADA, that's a average daily attendance, that's the way that schools are funded, that dropped by about 4%. The reason for that is the state has a very convoluted way in which they fund schools, where they look at your rolling average of the past 3 years of your attendance. And then they did some wonky things that helped districts during COVID times where they put us in a hold harmless. So they actually boosted our numbers above where they should have been for a couple of years because of COVID. And now because we're getting further away from COVID, those inflated numbers are starting to roll off. And so we are experiencing a decline in funded students and funded attendance far in excess of the actual enrollment decline year over year. Does that make sense? So again, no question, $3 million is a large number. We are not minimizing that, but the cost of the 3.5% raise, which was given to teachers, and we just agreed to a tentative agreement with our classified bargaining partners today. If we give a 3.5% raise to all staff, the cost of that is about 5.6 million. So again, when we're talking about overall percentages, it's a small relative percentage, although a large absolute number.
Want to thank everyone who's in attendance tonight. I also want to thank our board members who have been responding to questions in the chat with our virtual attendees. Do want to acknowledge that everyone has been very respectful through this process. These conversations are very difficult for all of us. Any cut that we're doing is painful. It's very clear. It means a lot to our community, our students, and our staff. So I really appreciate the turnout, the comments, and the tone that everybody's had, because we are a community, and this is a community plan, the LCAP. And so we're going to take all of the feedback that we receive. You're, again, welcome to post a Padlet or email us. It's all in the consideration, all part of this process, and nothing's been finalized. But I want to turn it back over to our superintendent for final remarks.
I just want to say that I feel that I understand the pulse of our community. I feel like I've been here long enough to know that. And I will just echo that this has been weighing on us for months now. So none of it is easy. And I'm grateful to work in this community and to be able to know that whatever decisions we make, we'll make together, and that we'll get through it together. And I have no doubt that we'll be even stronger when we're past all of this. So thank you. And there's more to come. Obviously, we have LCAP meetings for the rest of the spring. And we'll continue to provide information. I wrote down the homework of some data points that you guys have asked for. We'll make sure that you guys get that. And we will continue to discuss. And we'll continue to work together to come up with some good decisions. Thank you.
So a few final housekeeping considerations. These presentations are posted to our LCAP website on our site. The recording of this video will also be posted to our LCAP website for anybody who was not able to attend. We will be sending and distributing out information for any new upcoming meetings, but our next meeting isn't scheduled till I believe February. And if anything changes, we'll make sure to alert everybody. But again, thank you. Safe travels for everyone here, and have a good night at home.
It's good to finally meet. No, it's good. I appreciate your questions today, Tom.